Hello, Year 6, and welcome to Wednesday, May the 6th literacy lesson. It's also for Year 5 as well. We're going to be reading chapters 23 and chapters 24 of Black Beauty. So I will just share my screen. We'll go through yesterday's answers. So, number 1, Black Beauty had to leave his home because the mistress was ill. That was true. She needs to go away for 2 to 3 years, they said, to a warmer climate. Ginger and Black Beauty had a lot of work when the family were preparing to leave. That's true. There were lots of comings and goings, so lots for them to do. Joe and John were glad there was going to be a change. False. John was silent and sad, and Joe scarcely whistled anymore, barely ever whistled. The master did not say goodbye to John. False, they had quite an emotional goodbye. At the station, Joe was crying. That's true, he stood close to the horses, to the heads to hide their tears. Merrylegs was separated from Ginger and Black Beauty. That's also true, he went to the vicarage. Number 7, Mr. York did not seem like a kind man. That was false, said he acted very politely and had a good way with the horses. John warned Mr. York that Ginger was more irritable than Black Beauty. That is true. The lady at Urshel did not care about how the horses were presented, how they looked. That's false. She was very into her fashion. Number 10, this house was much prettier than Birtwick. That was false, or at least what Black Beauty said. That was his opinion, because the house that they were in was much bigger, Urshel, but didn't mean it was prettier. The lady of Urshel insisted that the horses' heads were held higher using the check rein. That is true. Okay, a quick bit of vocabulary before we start reading the chapter. So we have intolerable, okay, that prefix in suggesting not or not possible to put up with something. One we've seen before in this chapter, in this story, is vexed, and that means irritated or annoyed. It's really an old term for this because this book was written in the 19th century or the 1800s, 1887, I think. So you do find a lot of Old English. Invalid, an old term for someone who is unable to or their bed because they are ill or have a disability. And alighted just simply means to get off or descend from a bus, train, or horse, or some other form of transport. A few typos on this page, I'm afraid. Right, we're going to get on with reading those two chapters. So settle in, make yourselves comfortable. You can, of course, read this yourself. I'll put it in the notes on the video, and you can see the PDF is here, and that will also be available. Chapter 23, A Strike for Liberty. One day, my lady came down later than usual, and the silk rustled more than ever. Drive to the Duchess of Bexley's, she said, and then after a pause, are you never going to get those horses' heads up, York? Raise them at once, and let us have no more of this humouring and nonsense. York came to me first, while the groom stood at Ginger. He drew my head back and fixed the reins so tight that it was almost intolerable. Then he went to Ginger, who was impatiently jerking her head up and down against the bit, as was her way now. She had a good idea of what was coming, and the moment York took the rein off the terret in order to shorten it, she took her opportunity and reared up so suddenly that York had his nose roughly hit and his hat knocked off. The groom was nearly thrown off his legs. At once they both flew to her head, but she was a match for them and went on plunging, rearing, kicking in a most desperate manner. At last she kicked right over the carriage pole and fell down, after giving me a severe blow on my near quarter. There is no knowing what further mischief she might have done had not York promptly sat himself down flat on her head to prevent her struggling. at the same time calling out, "Unbuckle the black horse! Run for the winch and unscrew the carriage pole! Cut the trace here, somebody, if you can't unhitch it!" One of the footmen ran for the winch, and another brought a knife from the house. The groom soon set me free from Ginger and the carriage and led me to my box. He just turned me in as I was and ran back to York. I was much excited by what had happened, and if I had ever been used to kick or rear, I'm sure I should have done it then. But I never had, and there I stood, angry, sore in my leg, my head still strained up to the terret on the saddle, and no power to get it down. I was very miserable, and felt much inclined to kick the person who came near me. Before long, however, Ginger was led in by two grooms, a good deal knocked about and bruised. York came with her and gave his orders, and then came to look at me. In a moment he let down my head. "Confound these check reins," he said to himself. "I thought we should have some mischief soon. Master will be sorely vexed. But there, if a woman's husband can't rule her, of course a servant can't, so I wash my hands of it. And if she can't get to the Duchess's garden party, I can't help it." York did not say this before the men. He always spoke respectfully when they were by. Now he felt me all over, and soon found the place above my hock where I had been kicked. It was swelled and painful. He ordered it to be sponged with hot water, and then some lotion was put on. Lord Wessex was much put out when he learned what had happened. He blamed York for giving way to his mistress, to which he replied that in future he would much prefer to receive his orders only from his lordship. But I think nothing came of it, for things went on the same as before. I thought York might have stood up better for his horses, but perhaps I am no judge. Ginger was never put into the carriage again, but when she was well of her bruises, one of Lord Wessex's younger sons said he should like to have her. He was sure she would make a good hunter. As for me, I was obliged still to go in the carriage, and had a fresh partner called Max. He had always been used to the tight rein. I asked him how it was he bore it. That means how he could handle it. "Well," he said, "I bear it because I must, but it is shortening my life, and it will shorten yours too if you have to stick to it." "Do you think," I said, "that our masters know how bad it is for us?" "I can't say," he replied, "but the dealers and the horse doctors know it very well. I was at a dealer's once, who was training me and another horse to go as a pair. He was getting our heads up, as he said, a little higher, and a little higher every. A gentleman who was there asked him why he did so. "Because," said he, "people won't buy them unless the London people always want their horses to carry their heads high and to step high. Of course it is very bad for the horses, but then it is good for trade. The horses soon wear up or get diseased and then come for another pair." That, said Matt, "is what he said in my hearing, and you can judge for yourself. What I suffered with that rain for 4 long months in my lady's carriage, it would be hard to describe. But I'm quite sure that, had it lasted much longer, either my health or my temper would have given way. Before that, I never knew what it was to foam, but now the action of the sharp bit on my tongue and jaw, and the constrained position of my head and throat, always cause me to froth at the mouth more or less. Some people think it very fine to see this, and say, what fine-spirited creatures! But it is just as unnatural for horses as for men to foam at the mouth. It is a sure sign of some discomfort, and should be attended to. Besides this, there was pressure on my windpipe, which often made my breathing very uncomfortable. When I returned from my work, my neck and chest were strained and painful, my mouth tongue tender, and I felt worn and depressed. In my old home, I always knew that John and my master were my friends, but here, although in many ways I was well treated, I had no friend. York might have known, and very likely did know, how that rain harassed me, but I suppose he took it as a matter it could not be helped. and at any rate, nothing was done to relieve me. The Lady Anne, or a Runaway Horse. Early in the spring, Lord Wessex and part of his family went up to London and took Iron Ginger, and some other horses were left at home for use, and the head groom was left in charge. The Lady Harriet, who remained at the hall, was a great invalid and never went out in the carriage, and the Lady Anne preferred riding on horseback with her brothers or cousins. She was a perfect horsewoman, and as gay and gentle as she was beautiful. She chose me for her horse, and named me Black Austere. I enjoyed these rides very much in the clear, cold air, sometimes with Ginger, sometimes with Lizzie. This Lizzie was a bright bay mare, almost thoroughbred, and a great favourite with the gentlemen, on account of her fine action and lively spirit. But Ginger, who knew more of her than I did, she was rather nervous. There was a gentleman of the name of Blantyre staying at the hall. He always rode Lizzie, and praised her so much that one day Lady Anne ordered the side saddle to be put on her and the other saddle on me. When we came to the door, the gentleman seemed very uneasy. "How is this?" he said. "Are you tired of your good black horse?" "Oh, no, not at all," she replied, "but I am amiable enough to let you ride him for once, and I will try your charming Lizzie. You must confess that in size and appearance she is far more like a lady's horse than my own. Do let me advise you not to mount her," he said. "She is a charming creature, but she is too nervous for a lady. I assure you, she's not perfectly safe. Let me beg you to have the saddles changed." "My dear cousin," said Lady Anne, laughing, "pray do not trouble your good careful head about me. I have been a horsewoman ever since I was a baby, and I have followed the hounds a great many times, though I know you do not approve of ladies hunting. But still, that is the fact, and I intend to try this Lizzie that you gentlemen are all so fond of. So please help me to mount, like a good friend as you are." There was no more to be said. He placed her carefully on the saddle, looked to the bit and curb, gave the reins gently into her hand, and then mounted me. Just as we were moving off, a footman came out with a slip of paper and message from the Lady Harriet. Would they ask this question for her at Ashley's and bring the answer? So they had to go to the doctor's. The village was about a mile off, and the doctor's house was the last in it. We went gaily enough till we came to the gate. There was a short drive up to the house between tall evergreens. Blantyre alighted at the gate and was going to open Lady Anne, but she said, "I will wait for you here, and you can hang Auster's rein on the gate." He looked at her doubtfully. "I will not be 5 minutes," he said. "Oh, do not hurry yourself. Lizzie and I shall not run away from you." He hung my reins on one of the iron spikes, and was soon hidden among the trees. Lizzie was standing quietly by the side of the road a few paces off, with her back to me. My young mistress was sitting easily with a loose rein, humming a little song. I listened to my rider's footsteps until they reached the house and heard him knock at the door. There was a meadow on the side of the road, the gate of which just then cart horses and several young colts came trotting out in a very disorderly manner. A boy behind was cracking a grape. The colts were wild and frolicsome, and one of them bolted across the road and blundered up against Lizzie's hind legs. And whether it was the stupid colt or the loud cracking of the whip, or both together, I cannot say. She gave a violent kick and dashed off a headlong gallop. It was so sudden that Lady Anne was nearly unseated, but she soon recovered herself. I gave a loud, shrill neigh for help. Again and again I neighed, pawing the ground impatiently and tossing my head to get the rein loose. I had not long to wait. Black came running to the gate. He looked anxiously about and just caught sight of the flying figure now far away on the road. In an instant he sprang to the saddle. I needed no whip, no spur, for I was as eager as my rider. He saw it, and giving me a free rein, and leaning a little forward, we dashed them. For about a mile and a half, the road ran straight and then bent to the right, after which it divided into two roads. Long we came to the bend, she was out of sight. Which way had she? A woman was standing at her garden gate, shading her eyes with her hand and looking eagerly up the road. Scarcely drawing the rein, Blantyre shouted, "Which way?" "To the right," cried the woman, pointing with her hand, and the went up the. Then, for a moment, we caught sight of her. Another bend, and she was hidden again. Several times we caught glimpses and lost them. We scarcely seemed to gain ground upon them at all. An old road mender was standing near a heap of stones, his shovel dropped, and his hands raised. As we came near, he made a sign to speak. Blantyre drew the rein a little. To the common, sir. She has turned off there. I knew this common very well. It was for the most part very uneven ground, covered with heather and green furze bushes, with here and there a scrubby old thorn tree. There were also open spaces of fine short grass, with ant hills and turns everywhere. The worst place I ever knew for a headlong gallop. We had hardly turned on the common when we caught sight again of the green habit flying on before us. My lady's hat was gone, and her long brown hair was streaming behind her. Her head and body were thrown back as if she were pulling all her remaining strength, and as if that strength were nearly. It was clear that the roughness of the ground had very much lessened Lizzie's speed. There seemed a chance that we might over. While we were on the high road, Blantyre had given me my head, but now, with a light hand and eye, he guided me over the ground in such a masterly manner that my pace was scarcely slackened, and we were decidedly gaining on them. About halfway across the heath there had been a wide dyke recently cut, and the earth from the cutting was cast up roughly on the other side. Surely this would stop them. Though, with scarcely a pause, Lizzie took the leap, stumbled among the rough clods, and fell. Blantyre groaned. "Now, Auster, do." He gave me a steady rein. I gathered myself well together, and with one determined leap cleared both dyke and bank. Motionless among the heather, with her face to the earth, lay my poor young mistress. Blantyre kneeled down and called her name. There was no sound. Jem turned her face upward. It was ghastly white, and the eyes were closed. "Annie, dear Annie, speak to me!" But there was no answer. He unbuttoned her habit, loosened her collar, felt her hands and wrist, then started up and looked wildly round him for help. At no great distance there were two men cutting turf, who, seeing Lizzie running wild without a rider, had left their work to catch her. Blantyre's halloo soon brought. The foremost man seemed much troubled at the sight, and asked what he could do. "Can you ride?" "Well, sir, I bean't much of a horseman, but I'd risk my neck for the Lady Anne. She was uncommon good to my wife in the winter." "Then mount this horse, my friend. Your neck will be quite safe, and ride to the doctor's and ask him to come instantly. Then on to the hall, tell them all that you know, and bid them send me the carriage with Lady Anne's maid and help. I shall stay here." "All right, sir, I'll do my best, and I pray God the dear young lady may open her eyes." Then, seeing the other man, he called out, "Here, Joe, run for some water, and tell my missus to come as quick as she can to the Lady Anne." He then somehow scrambled into the saddle, and with a gee up and a clap on my sides with both his legs, we started on his journey, making a little circuit to avoid the dyke. He had no whip, which seemed to trouble him, but my pace soon cured that difficulty, and he found the best thing he could do was to stick to the saddle and hold me in, which he did manfully. I shook him as little as I could help, but once or twice on the rough ground he called out, "Steady, whoa, steady." On the high road we were all right, and at the doctor's and the hall he did his errand like a good man and true. They asked him in to take a drop of something. "No, no," he said, "I'll be back to him again by a short cut through the fields, and be there afore the carriage." There was a great deal of hurry and excitement after the news became known. I was just turned into my box, the saddle and bridle were taken off, and a cloth thrown over me. Ginger was saddled and sent off in great haste for Lord George, and I soon heard the carriage roll out of the yard. It seemed a long time before Ginger came back, and before we were left, and then she told me all that she had seen. I can't tell much, she said. We went a gallop nearly all the way, and got there just as the dog. There was a woman sitting on the ground with the lady's head in her lap. The doctor poured something into her mouth, but all that I heard was, "She is not." Then I was led off by a man to a little distance. After a while, she was taken to the carriage, and we came home together. I heard my master say to a woman who stopped him to inquire that he hoped no bones were broken, but that she had not spoken yet. When Lord George took Ginger for hunting, York shook his head. He said it ought to be a steady hand to train a horse for the first season, and not a random rider like Lord George. Ginger used to like it very much, but sometimes when she came back, I could see that she had been very much strained, and now and then she gave a short cough. She had too much spirit to complain. I could not help feeling it. 2 days after the accident, Blantyre paid me a visit. He patted me and praised me very much. He told Lord George that he was sure the horse knew of Annie's danger as well as he did. I could not have held him in if I would, said he. Never to ride. I found by their conversation that my young mistress was now out of danger, and would soon be able to ride again. This was good news to me, and I looked forward to a happy life. Okay, that's the end of chapters 23 and chapter 24. I will just go back to the smartboard so that you can see the questions. So you've got some multiple choice questions to do. These first ones are about chapter 23. The second page is about chapter 24. You can do the quiz on Purple Mash. That will be set for today and ready for you to go. Or if you're having trouble with that, you can send your answers to the Year 6 or Year 5 email group. Hope you enjoyed the lesson today. Bye.